Hi guys, welcome to what will probably be my last analysis video of the year. I recently played at the London Chess Classic in the open section, so no easy games whatsoever. I actually played opponents that were only 2000 FIDE and up. So the highest guy was 2205 and the lowest guy 2001. That's great for me. I only want to play these guys because they're going to make me better, because I won't be able to play. Well, I'm still going to play slightly crazy chess, but maybe with a bit more calculation behind it. Some of the games I found I calculated quite a lot and still lost. And some I just got lazy, and it's the lazy ones that I'm trying to cut out. I mean, as long as I'm working hard, I don't mind the losses as much. Because your opponents, sometimes, and in my case, most of the time, they're going to see a little bit more. But as long as you see a line that works okay, you can generally get away with chess. It's a bit of a bluff, really. Anyway, I had a good tournament. I got 2.5 out of 6, and that's because I know that sounds weird because it's a 9-round tournament, but I took a bye on round 5, and that was a half point, so I don't count that. And I also got a full point bye because my opponent didn't turn up an hour before the game. I actually did a vlog of that, I think. I'm not sure. If I didn't, then yeah, he got scared an hour before the game, and I was already at the venue when he pulled out. So I got a point, which meant I got to play a good player the next round, and the next day I got a feeding master. But it's not quite the same. I'd rather have played the game. Let's put it that way. And in by round 9, I just had nothing left in the tank. I've never played a 9-round international to the end. And it's definitely partially a fitness thing, but yeah, I mean, the last game, I had nothing left in the tank, so I did withdraw like a wimp. But 2.5 out of 6 isn't bad against 2000 plus FIDE players, so I was pretty chuffed with myself. I went on a mini streak of 3 games. I lost the first round against a 2205. It was interesting, and you can check all my games out because they're on Chess24. If you find the London Chess Classic, you'll find me there, Jacques Tavillier. So you can look at my games and see how I did in the other ones. I'm not going to show all my games. I'm only going to show 2 games. And I've called this video the Agony and the Ecstasy, and I think that will become apparent as to why I've called it that. But to date, I've only ever drawn with people that are 2000 plus. I've never actually managed to beat one. There always seems to be some little move I miss or something, and they get away. So with that little intro, I'll get in with the first game analysis. This guy was a Polish chap. He used to be the president of the Polish Chess Association. I don't know if he still is or isn't. I just heard that after the game. But his rating is 2001, and he's pretty tasty. I did a little bit of looking up his games before, which is something new to me once more. I only started doing that at the 4NCL and obviously the London Chess Classic, just to see the openings. I don't think I'm at the level yet where I can go any further than that. And what I noted was, against the Dutch, as you know I like playing the Dutch, he plays the Stilton Gambit, which is this. So I'll be happily playing my Dutch, and then he would hit me with e4. And don't get me wrong, I know this line, because you should know every gambit line that people play against you in an opening. Otherwise, you're just always going to get in trouble. And you take the pawn, and then you try and hold on to the pawn and give it back when it's when you can, basically, just to level the position, because you can never really hold the pawn for too long because white gets a hell of a lot of activity. You've always got to watch out for horribleness happening on the h5 square of the queen. Your king can get exposed. Long story short, this was the second game of the day. This is on a Sunday, and I'd already played a 5-hour game the game before, and I didn't fancy just trying to hold on against another strong player. So I stole an idea from Simon Williams. You know, he's had a few, so it's no bad thing to steal it. And I played e6. Here he could transpose into the French if he wanted to, but I've got a line in the French that I can play too. So I wasn't too fussed about if it ended up going into a French. But it was just not going to be a gambity line where I'd have to take the pawn and then hold on. And you have to take that pawn, because otherwise you're just worse in the Stilton Gambit. So my sneaky plan paid off because he played bishop f4 straight away, allowing me to play f5, and now there's no Staunton gambit. If he plays the pawn down now, it's just the bishop's more of a target in this line, so you get easier play as black. And it, I think the Staunton gambit computer always gives it like 0.2 to black when you take that pawn. In this position, if I take the pawn, if he plays e4, it's 1.2, so it's a clear pawn, and you know, happy days. And he's good enough to know not to play e4 here. So I won the mini opening battle, and then the game progressed with developing moves. Obviously, in a Dutch, if you don't know, you should know. You should be trying to play e4 as soon as possible, and black should be trying to counter that with either e5 or f4. I've said that many times on other videos, so I'm not going to go over that too much. The development phase of this is pretty straightforward. See, we're just focusing around this square e4, which is both trying to cover it, which is why I'm going to fiend check with my bishop. Just more coverage to e4. I'm also threatening b2. I mean, it's no big threat really. And he goes slightly wrong here already. Just knight f3 is just a normal move. There's nothing wrong with that. You developed your piece. You've defended the g-pawn, which I of course would take because I've not castled yet, so I'd have no quibble taking it. And white just carries on developing. I play bishop e7, blah blah blah. But he didn't. He played a bit of an unusual move here. And what I've got better at recently is a little alarm flags going off. And that move just didn't feel right. And the reason why it doesn't feel right is because this bishop now becomes a little bit more exposed. I mean, usually if they haven't played f3, the bishop can, maybe he'll play h3, and the bishop can sit quite happily on h2. But right now the bishop hasn't got a million squares, so if I attack it, which is what happened in the game, where can it go? I mean, it's not going to go here, is it? I mean, I'm just going to play d6 and gain another move before he comes back. So the bishop doesn't have many options here. And I'd love to have the bishop pair, because at some point, you know, the board will potentially come open. There's so many breaks in this opening, which is why it's such a great opening. That I'm just going to get my chance at some point. So he didn't waste his time there. He just dropped this bishop straight back. And I said, thank you very much, bishop pair, yum, yum, yum. Now, of course, I knew when I was taking this, I was opening up the h-file. But with the pawns where they are at the moment, it's not that easy for him to get in. I mean, he'd want to play something like f4 and then get his queen in. You know, if I've castled kingside, then it's quite a dangerous attack. Let's face it. At some point, maybe the bishop can come alive, and you know, I'll be in some sort of big trouble. But there's no point in panicking because it's so far away, and I get to make moves before that happens. You know, and as long as I'm not just carrying on regardless, I'm just going to castle kingside and you know, ha ha ha, not think about what I'm doing. I'll just get my pieces out. As long as you don't do that, you're going to be fine. So there was no fuss, or I'm not fussed at all about this open H file. Also, the follow-up to the move is now I'm attacking 2 pawns. This isn't the best move. The computer always disagrees with me, but for me, I'm dragging his king into the middle of the board, especially where he's going to potentially try and attack me. It's always nice to try and maneuver your opponent's king into a square it doesn't feel comfortable in. There's no queenside castling after this, and he has to defend the pawns. He can't just let either of these 2 pawns go because they're both vital. So obviously if he defends with the queen, I'll just take this one with check. Happy days, pawn up. So it makes no sense for him to not defend with the king, but as I just mentioned, it's got downsides. So he defends the pawns. My target in this game is always at some point now to play e5, and I knew this at this point of the game, that e5 would be devastating if I could ever pull it off, because then it will cause a lot of trouble on e6 if I take here. So my plan is already in my head, must try to play e5, and lots of my moves are around now trying to play e5 and also trying to stop any mates down the h-file. So the next move is going to look a bit weird, because I think even here I'd like to play e5. Not here, sorry. Say, I don't know. I just want to play a move just to show you what I was concerned about, and such moves as, okay, let's just play knight c6. And then I was really worried about him just playing f4 and then potentially get potentially just getting the queen into the game straight away, and maybe his pressure on here will build onto something. I don't know. Perhaps I can just drop back. I mean, I don't know. It feels a bit negative, but the point being, his queen can come in of check at some point, and I didn't like that. I was like, I'm not going to give you a free go against my king. No, thank you very much. And also, I really want to play e5, so I come up with a plan to do both moves. This will stop any. There's no shenanigans going on now. There's no like rook dropping into to h5 or the queen. I'm happy. There's no direct h pawn attack against my g pawn. It's very hard to get through the f pawn, so I feel comfortable here. And finally, I'm going to get my bishop to help me play e5, and I'd like to play e5 with the bishop behind it, because then perhaps the bishop can recapture with check, and maybe I'm on the b pawn too. So g6, so it looks a bit weird because I'm moving pawns near where he potentially has an attack, is actually quite useful for me. So he gets on with developing, which is sensible, and as I say, I've now got my bishop into a decent-ish square. e5 would be a move I really want to play. Now here, I could play e5. I just want to illustrate why I can't. I know this is really basic tactics, but I just want to show it anyway, because you should always be looking at trying to play the move you want to play. And then I was just concerned about this. And I'm just a piece down, so can't play it yet. So I need another piece or pawn, or a piece that can move after the fork. So at this point, I was already thinking, okay, so if the knight can get in here, and I play e5, and he takes, and my knight takes, if he then forks the knight, I'll always have knight g4 check, and have a nice position. So that's how I worked out my next stage of my plan. So that's why I went for knight c5, c6, sorry. Queen b3. I'm not 100% convinced about. I don't really understand this move. I was happy to see it on the board because the queen's over here. It's not really attacking my king. Okay, there's a weird little pin on my bishop. You know, if he plays c5, then obviously I'll never be able to take towards the center because it just take my queen. I guess at some point maybe he wants to play e5. It seems a bit dangerous to open up the position where this king is. And I'm not sure. I really don't know. I mean, I think this is a generic move you play in the Dutch, and in this case, I just don't think it's very useful. So I just castle, and you're thinking, oh, why are you castling? What are you doing? He's just going to double up rooks, which he attempts. But I was always in my head, well, what happens after I just play h6? It's defended by the bishop, so what if you double up? I'm just going to take back and win the exchange. And it's actually a really nice defense. I also want to get my king out of the way of potential queen pins. So I have a little bolt hole as well, which again will defend h6. So I'm quite happy, even though looks like I'm asking him to attack me. I'm not that fussed, and e5 is going to come at some point. I've been pretty patient in this game, which is unusual for me. So my opponent feels like he needs to do something. Obviously, I just said I can't take that pawn, so I just ignore it and defend the h6 pawn and break the pin, so I can play e5 because I really want to play e5. I guess, yeah, okay, you could say queen b3 was at least slowing down e5 because it was pinned against the king. But now my king's as safe as it's going to get. Plenty of defense around it, not easy to get to. There's no real easy good pawn breaks for him because his king will be more exposed than mine. So, I mean, taking away from the centre is not usually recommended. And this opens up a line for my rook. So now my rook's developed. So what's happened here is he's playing without a plan and I'm playing with a plan. And that makes a real big difference in chess because it's easier for me to find my moves. Don't get me wrong. We both spent loads of time here. We're actually almost used up our hour and a half each in this position because you get an hour and a half to make 40 moves and you get an extra 30 moves. 30 minutes to finish the game, plus 30 seconds per move, which sounds like forever. But when you're a bit tense and you're always working out, oh, can I play my knight here? Can I play my knight here? I want to just go back a few moves actually quickly, just to show you why it took so long to even play knight c6. There we go. Now, what I'd like to have played, obviously with my bishop on g7, I'd love to have played c5 and started attacking the centre here. But then, look at all these squares that are weak for me. So, you know, it was always a point of, oh, how do I break in the centre? You know, and that's why I decided on knight c6, because I saw that the tactics of playing e5 afterwards allowed the check here. So sorry to jump around, just remembered that. That was quite an interesting motif. So let me get back to the position. But, as I say, I settled on a plan where, you know, e5 was always in my head, and I don't think he was thinking much more than, oh yeah, I'll just mate him on the H file somehow. So I don't really know what's going on there. So the knight comes in. Note that there's no hole on d6, which is why I just mentioned what happened, because the c pawn's still here. And this may look a bit odd, sticking your rook behind the pawn to defend it. But at some point, I do want to play c5. It's a break in the position, yeah? I mean, I can play e5 or c5, or maybe even both. So the rook actually isn't that misplaced. And at some point, this knight will possibly have to come back. It's a little bit exposed there. You know, the queen is like on it at some point. It's just little bits of... it's not that great there. All it was doing was really attacking c5. And he's no longer defending d5 either with the knight, which is probably more useful defending there, because then maybe he can start trying to play a counter-attack himself. So, not too fast. Rook c8 I think was fine. He's doubled up rooks. Okay, as I say, there's absolutely no threat on this. It's just superficial. He's hoping I'll panic. But why do I need to panic? My position... Oh, I can't see a way through for him. If you can't see a way through for him, then he'll have to play something pretty imaginative to get through. And then you just learn another lesson. But for me, I felt like I'd built a nice fortress around my king. Finally, e5. At this point, we've both got about 15 minutes left on our clocks. But I'm happy because I had a plan the whole game and I finally implemented it. I think this is the time to play it because nothing else. He can't take anything else. I don't need to react to him anymore. I'd already pre-defended my king, so I don't have to worry about king safety anymore. So now I can finally get on with my plan. He played f4 almost immediately. I think he has to. Otherwise, I'm just going to take on d4 and happy days. Open position, two bishops. His king's pretty much in the center of the board. I'm going to get a nice attack. So I take. He takes. Now here, for those tacticians amongst you, there's a queen sack. I didn't see it, to be honest. I wasn't even looking at it. I was already pre-planning to re-centralize my queen and try and smash through the center. But there is a nice little shot here, which my friend Michael Healy, is a very good player, especially in tactics, goes, oh, why didn't you just take here? And I'm like, well, because I didn't see it, basically. But it's things you should look at in your game. I mean, it ends up computers buzzing away in the background being +1, and I think you can probably follow it through from here. Obviously, you have to take the queen. Then knight takes check. Obviously, undiscovered check, and you're attacking the queen. So the king has to move. Take the queen. You have a bit of a cough. A takes B. And finally, I believe you just take the rook. Yeah. So we just do rook takes. So in this position, it's only +1, funny enough, even though you're exchange up. So there's obviously quite a bit of play here for white for the material invested. Because yeah, isn't it exchange and a pawn? And 2 pawns? Ah, no. Yeah, it's changed in 2 pawns, so actually material is balanced. But I know, so yeah, I mean, there's target on b2, so this would have been good. Obviously, it would have been good. You know, when a 200+ player tells you, why didn't you do that? It's usually for a good reason. But I just didn't see it. I was already in pre-selected plan mode, which is always a bit plus and minus, you know, because I didn't feel anything bad here because I didn't see it, so I didn't lose any confidence for not seeing it. So I just re-centralized my queen, which is fine. A3 is just to stop the knight jumping in. The knight is actually a little bit of a pain for him because then I can play c5, and he has to do something with his light square bishop. I'm going to bring a rook over at some point, put some pressure on here. You know, there's lots of little things. Like basically, I'll be trying to move his bishop away so he's no longer defending this knight, and then maybe a rook over, and then potentially a bishop sack here at some point after scaring off this knight. You know, there's ideas. So Quite an easy attack had he let it happen, but he didn't. He played a3. So I attack his queen, gaining time on the queen. I am going to play c5. I've got to play c5 now because obviously this pawn chain still needs to be broken up. So I need to get the knight out of the way, and I'll get the knight out of the way by attacking the queen as well. So the queen runs to a safe square, and I get to play c5. So my plan has been 100% successful. I've managed to break with e5 and c5, and most of my pieces are in good squares. It's only my knight on a5 that isn't actually doing that much. His double rooks, yes, they're scary. No, they're not scary because they're doing nothing. They're just biting on granite. So I have no worries. He takes. Obviously, I guess he wants me to take back with either queen or rook, and then oops, b5, just lose to a fork. Which, funny enough, is how I pretty much lost to the 22-05 in the first round. After a really nice opening where we both tricked each other. But you'll have to look that game up on Chess 24. So there's a bit of a plug for Chess 24 there. So he took with the pawn, making me take with the pawn. And the reason is because he's dropping his bishop back and he's attempting to control d6. He just wants to drop his knight in. And, you know, that's a nice knight there. Be a bit of a clamp for him. Not massively easy for me to kick out. So, I mean, obviously I can. I have to move around a bit to do it. But there's no need because my next move is pretty natural. I now control d6 and I'm getting on with my pawn strikes in the middle. That's what, you know, every now and then, if you play with a plan, you end up with a nicer position. A really nice position in this case. Almost plays itself. I want to come back to the time issue. We're both very low on time here. We haven't like gained bucket loads of times by moving instantly. We've been thinking our way through this. So we're actually both down to possibly 5 minutes, and this is only move 23. And it's definitely an advantage to the player that has an easy plan versus, in this case, white, where he has to just move around a little bit. So he drops the knight back, which gives me a target. I want to play d4. Obviously, I want to play d4, but there's nothing wrong with sticking a rook behind the d pawn because at some point it's going to be a pass pawn, and I want a rook behind it. So Michael again said I could just have played d4 straight away, but I end up playing a rook behind it regardless later anyway. So there's nothing wrong with doing it now. It is not a lot white can do. He can't really stop it. So he tries bishop a2, and I say, well, okay, let's get on with it. You know, not only have I got in a move that's gonna gain tempi, I've opened up my bishop as well. My position is just lovely here. I mean, I must say, even though I'm panicking about the time, I'm sure he is too. I know my position's good, and I start having that horrible feeling, which I've had a few times when I play these guys, these good high-rated players, is that how am I going to mess this up? How am I going to mess this up this time? I mean, this just feels so good for me. How can I? Surely I'm going to be good. This is going to be the game, and I shouldn't be thinking about that. I should just be thinking next move, next move, next move. So we swap off. He has to move his knight, and I now threaten the G pawn. I mean, it's a really good threat, and there's only actually one defense which he plays. But now he's got a rook lined up with my bishop, and again, like I say, we're on move 28, and we don't have a lot of time. And I just saw a quick move here, and unfortunately, it wasn't the best move. I mean, it's totally tempting. I mean, and the computer suggestion is along the same lines, but a human in time trouble, you'll just go with a move that just looks about right. So here, I'm attacking his knight, and I'm attacking his rook. But I've totally underestimated a little resource for him, which is knight c7. It's actually quite clever, because there's no real way to stop this fork. So this bishop on a2, which originally I thought, it's not really doing a lot, is actually quite useful for him. So I obviously he's attacking my queen. I have to move my queen, and he gets the fork. Now, again, I didn't. This is a nice game for me in one way, because we're at move 30 now, and as I say, we're low on time. But I didn't panic, and I'm like, well, I see the fork coming, but I'm going to take your rook, so I don't care. You know, it's only a material exchange, and my d pawn is still there. That d pawn is the beast. That's the game winner. So I'll take his rook first, and now he takes my rook with check. I recapture. He recaptures. and I get on with d3. I mean, d3 for lots of reasons is good here. I mean, one, okay, I'm going to gain time on the knight. Two, I've actually opened up my bishop. Note how I no longer have any sort of threat coming against h6 for any time soon, so I don't need to panic about that anymore. I've also freed up the diagonal to attack his king, which is what I'd take advantage of straight away, because, as I say, you play moves that are that you need to get to time control. You play the most natural looking move you can, and not hope for the best, because it's forcing. So the knight moves, I get the queen back into the center of the board with check, and he moves his king. Now where his king is, okay, it's funny enough, it's actually fairly safe, but I have noted that at some point, this is in time trouble. I do have a little attack now. If that rook ever moves away, I might be able to attack him down the h file, and I always had that in the bank, which comes in handy in a bit. There's a bit of a spoiler. Bring my knight in because it's doing nothing, and it's always nice to, I may be threatening to sink it into e3 and maybe it can't be moved. So he tries some counterplay, b4, obviously gains time on my queen. Now here is actually quite a sneaky position here. Remember, we're low on time. What I'd love to have played is queen c7 and then potentially g5, because this pawn would be pinned against the king. And I was worried about, because I couldn't really calculate properly here because I'm panicking about the clock, but I was worried about him just dropping his knight in and gaining time, and then I'll have to be like, oh well, I'm going to have to move my queen again anyway. But there's such a lovely move here, and again, Michael's be careful if you put yourself in a tactical position with him. But how's this for tactics? In your face. And this is checkmate. So, and I don't know, I mean, how many times I'm going to have to see certain ideas before they stay in my head, but that's such a spectacular checkmate that, that might actually come in handy one day. So, I didn't see that. Again, I'm honest about this. So, had I done this, had I dropped the queen back and he brought his knight in, I may have just put my queen on c7 or c8. So I thought, in time pressure, why give him any sort of false tempi? And I just need to get my queen out of there. So I just dropped it back to c8, which, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. I have to defend my knight, and I'm still in a very, very good position. The knight and the pawn are pretty devastating. So this is a move 35. So we're so close now. He moves his knight back because I'm threatening to take the knight, obviously. There's not actually a really good square for it, so that's not too bad because he's trying to cover d2. So here, I thought we'd have a little bit of a repetition. I don't want to draw, obviously I don't. I just want to get through some moves quickly. So obviously queen there is the best move. And then I thought, oh good, now he'll bring his queen back to d1. And I've gained a couple of moves. This is move 37. But he just took. And I couldn't believe it when he took that. Because that bishop was potentially his trump in the position. Because I haven't got a light square bishop to challenge it. And also now, look at the knight on b1 is in, well, it's in no man's land. And the bishop on g7 is controlling most of the squares. So I was really happy here. He played rook d1. I start my h-pawn attack now that he's moved his rook away. I did say this is possible. At some point I can deflect the king. Perhaps I'm going to pick up these two pawns. And then his king's naked. He's just going to die. Die of hypothermia. So he tries to swap queens. This is on move 40 for him. And I say no. And I take a big deep breath and I walk off. And I go and get myself a cup of coffee. And I'm like, I know my clock's going, but I don't care. I've got 30 minutes. I know my position's really nice. And I'm happy. I'm just like, yep, this is great. I can put the I can put my heart rate down a little bit and come back and finally win against a 2000 rated player. I'm pretty confident I'm going to do so, especially as time was my biggest fear. I will note at this point, I was a little bit concerned about these two. I mean, if they ever do get running, they're quite dangerous. So, I mean, I'm not technically up any material here, but the problem is his king is exposed and he is totally passive. So that's why I'm basically winning. And I worry about these pawns a little bit too much later, but I'll come to that. So he gets on with moving those pawns, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't have to worry about it too much, because if the pawn goes another square, I'll just take it with my queen. So I want to deflect his king. So if he ever takes the pawn, then I'm just going to hit him with check here. He's not going to come down here, so he'd go here, and I'd win this pawn with check. And now I'm just happy. My queen is just kicking his ass. That's game over pretty much. So he's not going to take, but it does give me another attacking piece pawn in the position. I bring my rook over, because obviously I'd like to get my rook in. And he looked a bit confused here, and he played rook e1 as if like, well, okay, if we swap off material, well, it's all going to be fine for me, because I'm going to swap off material and then win with my b pawn or a pawn, depending on, you know, how fast they go. But I don't have to swap, and I had done some calculating up to this point, because I had some time to do so. And rook check, I mean, the computer's gone off the scale. It's a bit annoying, really, because I don't follow through the correct way, as we've seen in many other games. But it was a nice spot in the first place, because I saw this position in my head. And I'm like, oh, well, this is great. Because what comes next is pretty forced for me. I'm going to clean up his queenside pawns. He's not going to have any pawns around his king. I'm going to win. Hopefully he'll just resign, and then that doesn't matter. And this is another reason why you don't resign positions, which you'll see shortly. Now, there's an absolute killer move here, and those looking at this screaming at the screen for me to play it, but I don't play it. But I'll give you 5 seconds to have a quick look. I'm not giving you long, because this video will drag on. I've got another game to get through. But queen d1. It's the end. Originally I was thinking, oh, well, what difference does it make? He'll just play his king here, and then if we swap, his king will be in a nice place. But no, that's just game over. It's actually mate in 4. So this is why it's a bit of an agony game, because I could have finished it off quite quickly. Now, what I will say is, it's not, oh, I didn't see this move. I mean, I didn't try to calculate this hard enough, and I definitely have the ability to. You know, some of the lines I see are pretty complicated sometimes. But I also have the ability to be overly scared. And I saw like, oh, well, if the queens do get swapped off, maybe I am a bit fearful of these pawns. So I found a line where I hoover everything up. Which I thought after the game, when I did this analysis video, I'd say to you guys, well, yeah, okay, I missed the main line and the quick win. But I made sure that I couldn't lose. And I did make sure that I couldn't lose. But unfortunately, I didn't give myself quite the winning chances that I wanted to. Though, you'll see. So I take a pawn. He takes a pawn. This is all forced. Check. Check. Has to block. That's all his pawns in front of his king gone. Has to block. Has to block. Check. That's it. Now, his winning chances are 0 now. Absolutely 0. Because that a pawn's going to drop too. His knight's a bit out of play, so he develops his knight. So I've allowed that, which is not ideal, but I'm never worse than +4 here. So I defend my H pawn, and I also attack in his A pawn. Brings his knight in. Okay, knight G5 check can be annoying, so I'm just ready to swap that off when it happens. And here I decide, well, I'll take a pawn, you take a pawn. I'll have 2 passed pawns. I must be winning this. So, sorry, no, I didn't play that. I went to G8. And he's threatening the G6 pawn, so I re-centralise my queen to defend. Now here, I mean, I'll never, ever fall for this again, because you only fall for these kind of things once. I didn't know that I've actually stalemated his king. I control all the squares around his king. I mean, in my head, I'm like, oh, that's perfect, because if I get my pawn up, I'll just mate you. Whoops. But simply here, I should just be playing my queen to G4, or even working it back round to maybe even to F8 with checks. Hang on, not F8, because he'll just take here. Ah, yes, F8 with checks, leaving his king on this square, so that when he takes this pawn, I would just skewer his queen, and then hopefully have a winning pawn ending. Maybe that's not even a winning pawn ending, actually. So even that isn't great. But I just didn't note that his king stalemated, and unfortunately, that's game over. It's stalemate because I have to take the queen. I can't exactly dodge around. It's not like when a rook chases you, you might get a chance to get the rook off your tail, which that's another stalemating idea, when the rook can chase you around. But in this case, there's no escape from that queen, so it's a draw. So I'm devastated in one way because like I went down the safety route and then just walked straight into it, and I didn't even have that much time trouble. We both had about 15 minutes left. There's no excuse other than I'm obviously going to give an excuse that this was my second 5-hour game of the day, and I was just tired. But yeah, disaster. So that is the agony part of this video. So give me a second and I'll move on to the ecstasy part of it. So those that noticed that weird jump in the video, that wasn't a mistake. I actually pressed the pause button. I didn't know I had a pause button. That meant I don't have to talk for like an hour straight. It's quite difficult to do. I also loaded up game 2. Now, game 2, I'd actually played my opponent in the 4NCL about 2 weeks before. So if you want to check that video out, that's also in YouTube somewhere. Just look at the 4NCL analysis video. And I've never had that before. I've never played a game against a guy like 2 weeks later. So obviously he's learnt from the first game. I swindled him in a position where I definitely shouldn't have, which is, you know, it's quite a fun game. So check it out. And he because of that swindle, I'm sure he was 100% fired up to beat me. He's pretty strong. He's 2022 FIDE and he's a 190 ECF player. So you know, he's handy. So I was very happy how this game went. I mean, there's no point denying that, you know, obviously this game goes well, because I wouldn't have called the video Agony and Ecstasy otherwise. But to finally put the ball in the goal that I've been trying so hard for the last 3 months, come so close, as you've seen in other videos, to finally get this ball into the goal, it's massive for me. I mean, I feel so much more confident because of it. So without talking too much more about it, let's get into the game. Those that have seen the previous video know that my opponent plays the French. And at this point, whoops, in the 4NCL, he played knight h6. And so, obviously, knowing I had my opponent from a couple of weeks ago, I've properly looked at this line. And it seems that you can take that knight straight away and have a decent position. I'm not going to go into it now because I've obviously analysed it quite deep. But here you just take the knight, and white has a nice game, a very nice game. I'm sure the black side will argue that black has a nice game, but from what I've seen, white has a pretty straightforward plan, and it's decent. And it also led to a couple of other lines that, you know, thanks to a guy I met at the Ginger GM Crypt Blitz event. Lovely guy, FIDE master called Ingvar from Iceland. He helped me look at a couple of French advanced games. So I've got a little bit of an armory now, which is nice. Which I didn't need to use in this game because he diverged here. Which I think personally means that I won the opening battle once again, because my opponent had a good game after playing knight h6. And he's just gone back into a main line. So I feel like I got a slight win in the opening for that reason. He actually plays my favourite line, which I'm sure, again, he's looked up. Though he's spent a lot of time at this point. I think it was a bit of a bluff. So I did the same thing. When he took 10 minutes to make a move, I took 10 minutes to make a move. Just, you know, I think we're trying to out-psych each other. Now, those that watch me online know that I like sacking that D pawn. So, no qualms of just castling. He doesn't have to take it. He can decline the gambit. But when you do take this pawn, white does get a fun game. There's no denying it. It's not necessarily a win, because at the end of the day, I'm a pawn down, and it's a connected pass pawn. You know, that a protected pass pawn. Sorry, that D pawn. So it's quite scary. If you go wrong as white, then you're just going to lose. So you have to be as active as you possibly can. I'm not explaining these moves too deeply because it's not necessary. There's lots of ways black could have gone here, so you know this video is already pretty long. But this is a main line, and up to this point, this is all book moves. I'll start talking about it probably about now. Now, the good side of white, okay, I'm a pawn down, but I'm just gaining another 10p on the queen with the bishop, and all my pieces are out. All my pieces are out, and I'm castled. He is not castled. he still has a bishop's trapped here, and this rook's out the game for now. So the compensation for this protected pass pawn is that you've got all your bits out. And if you like that kind of chess, then this is the opening for you. So he retreats the queen, which is the right square. If he drops back to c7, you gain it to attack this pawn. At some point, you know, bring your knight to here or to here and attack here. You actually get another tempi getting your rook into the game. And if he then gets the knight out of the way, you then got a target with the knight. At some point, you're going to play b4. You can actually slow play this. You can play a3 and in b4. There's not really that much you can do about it. You may have to throw in rook e1 or something just to solid up the pawn a little bit. But White's position, at least at the beginning, plays itself. But he dropped back to the right square. He's a good player. And he has looked at this line. We discussed it afterwards. Now, a line he hadn't quite looked at, because it's not really the best continuation, is this. Knight g5. I just want to checkmate him. Just bring my queen in and mate. It's probably better I do that, because you see I after very long games I go quite wrong. So, you know, go for the throat. I mean, it's pretty much my chess ethos anyway. I don't want to ever sit in a position where I have to defend, because I don't defend well. And if you check out some of my other games on Chess 24, you'll see that I get in the games I lose in a passive position, I don't really help myself at all. And I'm learning from that. So we'll see how that pans out over the next few months of me playing. But yeah, my threat is just checkmate. I just want to checkmate the guy. Let's play h6, which the computer says is fine. Another move he could have played is knight c6. Seems weird to move a piece away, but this is a good move too. Puts lots of pressure on this pawn. This pawn, if that drops, I'm not in a good place. Even if I win the e pawn here, I mean, you can make some really bad moves here. I mean, I think this might be really good for black. So you got to be a little bit careful. It's just winning the h pawn's not the be all and end all. And really, I mean, my knight is after f7, and also I'm out the way, so maybe I can play a quick f4, f5. So it's a nice aggressive attack from white. But h6 is fine. It's not the end of the world. I briefly looked at queen coming in anyway, because it's a little bit of a clever move, but a good looking move rather than a good move, because he can't take, because I just take his rook. But annoyingly, after g6, queen back, I have to move this knight anyway, because he's just going to play bishop into g7, and he's just got a nice position. Remember, he's still a pawn up as well, so that was never going to work, unfortunately. Which led to, I mean, I didn't know this move before the game, to be honest. I've never played this knight h7 because I was a little bit concerned about what he didn't play, but luckily it's just bad for him if he does. I say lucky. I mean, obviously, I actually thought maybe he'd take the knight and trap the bishop, but I think I can actually get that bishop out. It's not trapped there forever. I can play. Well, I'd have to play g4 straight away, just to stop the knight coming into here, because maybe I can win this h6 pawn. It's a different game and there's a lot of moves, but I felt like I could definitely get that bishop out and basically exchange up. Well, exchange for a pawn. Remember, I lost a pawn, but that didn't happen. So he played the next best move, which is allowing his dark square bishop to get out. And the whole point of knight h7 is if I win this dark square bishop, I should have a lot of play on the dark squares, which I didn't even hesitate here. As soon as he played knight c6, yes, he's attacking my pawn, but I'll take the bishop first, forcing him to recapture. And he does have a choice between two pieces to take with. And it's quite funny, we both thought the same thing here. Had he taken with the king, then I was thinking, well, my bishop's instantly in on the dark squares. And then basically I just need to defend this pawn either with bishop into d6, probably most natural, or f4, just to cover any b6 checks, just in case there would be some, and maybe pick up the b pawn. But you know, I just felt that my position was going to be good here. His rook's pretty much out the game, and I'll just have good dark square control, so I'll just play along the dark squares and hope for the best. Uh, I say hope for the best. Obviously, I'm still going to be aggressive. I'm going to bring my rook up, you know, and just basically still try to checkmate him. So he took with the rook, and now the rook is probably slightly better to take with the king. I mean, the computer's saying it's better to take with the king, but you can take with the rook, because the plus side of this, if I try and do the same plan of ha ha ha, I'm going to get my bishop into d6, you can just take this pawn, because losing the exchange here, that rook wasn't really doing anything, and now this is scary. The king is totally safe. These are monster pawns controlling the position. Just, you know, he's threatening to take my bishop, and bishop's going to have to move. He's gaining time left, right, and centre. And black, I just feel is better here. I don't even have anything, like, I'd love to just, like, launch. But I'm just loosening my position, and he's just better. He's going to be able to play bishop c6. It's just not a nice place for white to be. So that's why he took with the rook, because I'm sure he assumed I wouldn't just play a move without thinking. But you know, I did think in this game, and I was as fired up as him, because though I got lucky in the first game that we played against each other, I actually felt I had really good chances in that game too that I didn't take. So I wanted to beat him as much as he wanted to beat me. So he took with the rook, and I didn't play bishop c5. I just supported the pawn. At some point, I can play potentially f5, and I'm feeling quite good here. So yeah, he attacks the bishop. He also wants to open up the diagonal to stick a bishop on, as I said previously. Get a bishop onto a nice diagonal. Happy days. So I move my bishop. Queen b6 seems natural again. If my bishop moves, there's always a naughty little check at some point. Gives his knight another square. Knight can come into d4. He's doing really well. But that knight can't go anywhere just yet. And he was a bit surprised by this, I think. But b4, can't take it, because if he takes it, I'm just going to bring the rook in. So say just takes, just casually. He's never going to do this, and I'm just winning, because there's no good way to break the pin. If he plays a5 to defend the, sorry about this. If he plays a5 to defend the knight, you just play a3, and I win a piece. And, you know, obviously b4 isn't, oh yeah, ha ha ha, good, take the b pawn. The point is I'm going to play b5, and then where's the knight going to go? I'll also defend c6 to stop the bishop coming in. I don't want to make that bishop a good bishop if I can help it. So he drops the knight back. He has got a square here, which is a nice square. And here, I had two choices. I could play a4 or the move I played. Now, a4 is probably better, and the reason I didn't play it was because of this line. And I just thought, well, his bishop was pretty rubbish on d7. And now suddenly it's a fairly good piece. You know, it's attacking the g pawn. It's controlling some squares on the queen side. You know, it helps the rook come into the game a bit more. Maybe he can swap the bishop for my good bishop by getting his bishop to c4 eventually. And I thought, well, no, I'm not going to help him get a good bishop. But I had a choice, because I knew that by not giving him a good bishop, I give him a good knight. And in hindsight, perhaps he hasn't got that many options here. Maybe I can just get on with a5 and just carry on with the attack on the queen side. You know, while this rook's out of the game, I can pretty much do what I like for now. Just got to be aware that that rook can at some point, you know, break. He can break at some point, maybe to f6, I don't know, f6 or f5. And it's suddenly in the game. But I just have to play. But I didn't go with this plan, because I didn't want to make that bishop good. So I played what keeps the bishop bad, but gives him a fairly good knight. I mean, the computer's not really fussed either way, as long as I follow through. So yeah, okay, his knight's going to be good, but he's only got one good piece in the position. He is still, as I say, technically a rook down. So what I was a little bit concerned about is if he does drop his knight in and I take, and he takes with his pawn, at some point there may have been a e2 check. So also, if the knight comes in this side, there might be a knight check on e2 at some point. That could also be really annoying. So I avoided all checks by just getting my king out of the way. Okay, it's a little bit cowardice in one way, because I'm a computer as brave as anything. Will just say, "I'll just leave your king there and it's fine." But I'm not a computer, and I've lost too many times by checks that I could have avoided. The Dutch is a big example of that. So I very often play king h8 in the Dutch, just to get out of the way of any sort of checks. And there's nothing wrong with this move. It's just it's not actually doing much other than avoiding some future threats. So he controls the c file. I get on with a4 because I want to defend that pawn. Now he could actually just take it. A5 is a threat, so he's attacking my queen. Move my queen to what I consider a more active place anyway. I quite like it. As sometimes I love to sneak it in to checkmate him. I haven't lost the ideas of trying to checkmate. He brings his queen in, makes him more active. I was going to play a5 anyway, so yep. Here, with queen c5, I mean, the computer's not disliking black's position that much. I'm always looking at, hang on a minute, if I get my bishop to a3, then I'm obviously skewering. I'd have to decide whether I want to even take that rook, because as I say, the bishop's probably better than that rook. But it's there as an option. I mean, the stronger threat is then to get your queen involved and then checkmate on e7. So that's why my next move pretty much played itself. I was quite happy finding this move. A retreating move, but there's not really a lot he can do about it. So he tries to swap queens. I'm not swapping queens. If I swap queens, he's got a pass pawn, and it's dangerous. He's still a pawn up, remember. So we can't swap queens. And I never was going to anyway. And here I thought he might even try to repeat and just bring the queen back. But then I was going to put my queen onto a5 and then bring the bishop in. I mean, even here, I've got this. I know I've got this. But as I said earlier, I was already thinking about, is it actually worth me taking this rook? And that's up to you guys, whether you think it is or not. I didn't get to that position because it didn't happen. But here I would have gone on to a big think. Because I would have probably played queen a5 and kept the pressure. Because I'm threatening not only queen a3, but I may be actually winning these pawns then. So that was what my thinking was at the time if it came to the choice. But he didn't put his queen in front of me. Nope. Played a more active move, I guess, in one way. He's trying to get his rook out. He's giving his king an escape square. Makes a lot of sense. But you have to take en passant here because two reasons. One, you want to have a target. You know, you can get a rook to e8 here. There's a target. Two, if you do nothing, then his king's actually pretty safe, to be honest. He can walk quite happily. Very hard for me to break through. So taking en passant didn't take me long to work out. I needed to do that. So took the rook. The rook's finally into the game, if you like. It's not doing anything too much yet. I go straight in with the mate threat because, you know, I think you're getting that from me now. Even though my finishing isn't spectacular. I do try. I do try hard. I'd get top marks for trying. So I'm threatening mate. He just moves his king, says, yep, calculated this, you haven't got a mate. I don't have a mate, he's quite right. Here I was thinking, oh, maybe if I could just stick my bishop here, then it's mate, because there's no escape squares after queen check. He just brings his rook in, and that's the end of the mate threats. And if anything, he's defended this pawn some more. It's not going to happen straight away, but potentially he's going to expand. You know, his position's not that bad. Always got to worry about this pawn. I'm always a warrior, a bit of a warrior. So no point in bishop h7 because it just helps him for the hope that he'll miss it for a one move checkmate. He's 1-9 whatever, so we're not we're going to assume that he's got some sort of defense there. But I have noticed something in the position, and I'm quite proud of this move. There's a big square here where a rook. It's like a jigsaw puzzle with a rook shaped piece, and it just wants to go there. Because if I can shift this queen out the way, this bishop isn't that well defended, and it is the only piece defending this rook and potentially this pawn too. If I can ever move this queen, the queen's also a big defender of the d pawn. So that's why this move is a big move. He runs his king away. It's fine, it's the best move, but I do get what I want. So the queen goes to a2, thinking that at some point, whatever I take, be it this or even up here and in trying to take this, he'll just take the a3 bishop and it should work out. So obviously I saw this, stuck my bishop in anyway, because you know you've got to respond. Because now, if I take this bishop, he doesn't have time to take this bishop because I'll just take his rook with check. So I'm just winning. And now my queen is totally active into the position. A blunder, a little bit of time pressure on my opponent's part. I mean, it's a blunder, but doesn't lose instantly. Obviously, I saw this and I was already ready to play this move. So, takes. And here, unfortunately, he blunders even bigger. I mean, it's hard to see because bishop e8 doesn't exactly scream at you to play. Because you're thinking, well, hang on a minute. Can't I just take here? Which, of course, I can. And is the best move. I can even, and then you're thinking, oh, I could just take here. And then queen takes. Your positions, you've lost control. You're, let me show you. Queen takes. And then queen takes e6. Rook takes, obviously. And then, well, I actually got a hanging pawn here. And now this pawn is hanging. And suddenly I've gone from a beautiful position to what the hell's going on, and this is still a passed pawn. So it'd probably be best to actually take the b pawn first. Ask the question of the rook. Computer saying defend the rook with queen c4 is also attacking my rook. I guess my rook moves to e8 and the game goes on. But that's not an easy move to see. So in a little bit of time pressure he played, oops, sorry. Yeah, no, this is the main line. He took the bishop, allowing me to take a bishop. And here, I mean, the tactics just work for me. He has to move his rook. I win that d pawn, so there's no passed pawn anymore. He grabs a pawn. Now here, I play the best move, but I was tempted for a good 2-3 minutes to play this. Because obviously I'm attacking his rook, right? I mean his knight. The queen's going to have to move because the queen's defending the rook. And I'm just going to take his knight and be a piece up. And then it's resign time. But I saw they had this. And that's a real party pooper. I mean, I'm still probably just about up here. But there's no need to walk into this. When I can just play, thank you very much, I'll take that pawn. Because there's not really a lot he can do about it. After I've taken it, not yet, but potentially my mating threats are back on again. My king's pretty safe. You know, funny enough, the lighted date is on H1. So, you know, the earlier paranoia actually paid off in this case. So the attack's pretty straightforward. So I'm feeling pretty good here, gotta say. And obviously, the night before was the game that I let that massive lead go to a draw. So I had that in mind. So I tried to stay as calm as possible here. And not playing rook a1 was a good start. So he's attacking my rook, trying to bring his knight back into the game. But I can now attack his queen. It's not even the strongest move. The computer says, bloody computers. Obviously, he's now blocked the queen. I was never considering this because the queen was always defending that square. I've overlooked the fact that the knight's now blocking the queen, and this is just crushing. But what a play! It still wins. I've noted that the knight, okay, it's defended by the queen. Well, I can attack that queen. And then he tries to bring his knight back, attack my queen, but there's a check, and that just wins the knight, and that wins the game. So I finally beat a 2000 player and an ECF 190. I've been trying so blooming hard. You've seen the games where I've come close. But as I say, that's my last analysis video for this year. So hopefully I'll get back on it for next year. But for now, Merry Christmas everyone, and have a great New Year's. And just keep fighting hard. Never give up. I've shown you my opponents don't give up, and they get results. And I've obviously trying to add that to my armory too. So this is bye for now. But thanks a lot everyone for watching this year. And if you haven't, please like and subscribe. But for now, bye and have a great 2018.